Well, welcome everyone to this week's edition of Inside Harvard Football. Bernie Corbett, pleased as always to be joined by Harvard head coach Tim Murphy as we take a look back to the most recent action for the Crimson at Georgetown and ahead when they head back on the road in Ivy League play this week to Cornell. Coach, welcome. Great to have you with us, and 2/3 of the way now through the non-league schedule. Big win on the road. Always good to get one on the road, and the Crimson were able to do that in our nation's capital.
No question, Bernie. It was an enjoyable trip. I love D.C. My daughter Molly works there for a tech company. My daughter Grace did a gap year at the Capitol building, and when the kids were little, when they were in the 5th grade, I do a father-daughter, father-son trip with them, and it's just a great place to be, great place to play football, and doing it at RFK Stadium was somehow really cool. A stadium named after, one of the great civil rights leaders, one of the great sort of Kennedy icons, and also just sort of the echoes of the old Washington Redskins. So it was a great trip, and we did what we had to do, a lot of work to do, but it was an enjoyable road trip.
Well, big play immediately on special teams set the tone, and we've been talking the last couple of weeks, Coach, about you just get the ball into the hands of Justice Shelton Mosley any way possible. In this case, it was a punt return that opened up 91 yards and broke a record of a former teammate of Robert Kennedy, Hal Mafi, that went back some 70 years.
Well, no question. He's a once every 70 years player. Justin, one of the
Right.
really outstanding skill guys we've had. We knew that when we recruited him. We knew it when he was Ivy League Rookie of the Year as a freshman, and we have to continue to create touches for him to get the ball in his hands without being predictable doing it.
Well, if there was one area that you struggled that you referenced was just in terms of coverage, 243 yards in returns that were given up to Georgetown. That might have been the only real negative area was on the other side, ironically, with the 91-yard return that got you started on the right foot as far as putting points on the board.
Yeah, and I think, Bernie, if you look at us, our strengths right now and our relative weaknesses right now, our strength would be defense, number one, and then a lot of room for improvement still for the offense and special teams, especially for our coverage teams, punt return, and I should say punt coverage and kickoff coverage especially, and plenty of room for improvement with the offense in terms of consistency. So we're improving, but right now we've got a lot of work to do.
Talk about the offense finding more consistency, Coach. For the second week in a row, Jake Smith got the start, the freshman, 11 out of 22 for 139 yards. And you saw Joe Viviano come in the fourth quarter. Still, I guess you've termed it a work in progress as far as sorting things out definitively at that position with the youngster and the veteran.
Yeah, Bernie, I'm not necessarily a fan of the two-quarterback system. In my 31 years as a head coach, I've never really done it. But, since we sort of dabbled in it, experimented with it in Game 2, we've scored back-to-back 40-point games. Certainly a lot of that, at the hands of our defense as well. But until we can sort of justify playing one, we'll certainly keep all options on the table and play two guys.
Offensive line, we had Ben Schultz as our guest, our Crimson Profile last week, and he is the anchor of that unit. And your assessment now, 3 games in and headed toward the middle and, of course, the home stretch of the schedule as to how that unit's been able to develop and progress around Ben Schultz, the veteran in the middle.
Well, Ben certainly has been sort of the catalyst for that group and the leader of that group. He's now a 2-year starter, very comfortable, has a lot of personality, a lot of grit, so everybody rallies around him. So he's the quarterback, very knowledgeable player. Timmy O'Brien at left tackle, 6'7", 285-pound left tackle, is playing extremely well. Danny Layden, our right tackle, got hurt. He will not play for Cornell, but he can come back with another veteran. So the bottom line is that it's a very solid group, plenty of room for improvement, but has the ability, or at least the potential, Bernie, to be a strong unit for us.
And nice to see the ball spread around between your two quarterbacks distributing. I believe you had 11 different receivers that had a reception.
Well, any anytime you can diversify your passing attack in terms of distribution, in terms of what you do, puts a lot more pressure on a defense. We do have to get more touches out of our top guys, but again, at the end of the day, we're a take what they give you offense. So if it means going through your reads and getting to someone else, we're fine with that.
And the two-headed monster in the backfield with Booker and Shampklin, they've complemented each other very well. They both hit an even 65 yards apiece to give you an effective running game.
Well, I'll tell you what, right now our running back situation is as strong as we've had it in a while. And you look at Charlie Booker and Aaron Shampklin, freshman out of Long Beach Poly, and boy, it's really given us, an outstanding kind of Thunderbolt and Lightfoot pair at running back. And with Charlie, coming out of a big program in Texas, outstanding high school player, since he's been healthy, become an outstanding and dominant running back. That's the only thing that's held him back, and knock on wood, that's where he's at. Aaron has really done a great job in his transition from high school and gives us two real sort of different backs, but very dependable, very explosive. So if we can keep those two together, it's a good thing for Harvard football.
And you mentioned, Coach Murphy, at this point, the strength of the team, the backbone is on defense. Big plays abounded on Saturday. 4 forced turnovers in the first half alone. Second week in a row, you got a pick six, this time from Rashawn McGee. That unit really seems to be gelling. I know we talk every year about can a defense get to be a championship caliber defense, and you seem to have one that's emerging with all units right now.
Well, we've definitely played very well defensively, allowed 2 touchdowns in the first, 1 in the second, and obviously had a shutout in the third. Now, we have not met the strength of our opponents. We have not met the strength of our schedule yet, and obviously your health can change dramatically, and that can sort of change the climate defensively. But we're playing good defense. We're giving ourselves a chance to win, and that's all you can ask.
Looking ahead to this week, Coach, Cornell team that's struggled out of the gate, currently at 0-3, one loss in the league to Yale back 2 weeks ago. Your thoughts getting ready for Cornell? Never easy, though. We know anybody that's been involved with Crimson football and part of Crimson Football Nation, the trip to Ithaca is often one that's been filled with obstacles over the years, and one you got to be very mindful of being able to get that W.
Well, I think what people forget is going into the 1996 game, Harvard had lost 12 consecutive games to Cornell, and I'm sure a lot of Harvard fans have a hard time getting their head around that. But we're on an 11-game winning streak against Cornell. That's the good news. I think the challenging news is that they're always tough. They're always tough for us, and they're particularly tough in Ithaca. So we will certainly have our hands full. And
Coach, announcement made here this week about the initiative fundraising for Ben Abercrombie, and just give you an opportunity now to enlighten us with regard to that and what people can do to support Ben and his family.
Well, first of all, Bernie, I'm so proud to be a part of the Harvard community to respond in this time of this family's need. And we have established through the Harvard Varsity Club the Ben Abercrombie Fund, which will not only help the overwhelming financial costs of an injured or catastrophically injured student athlete, but in the future, if that should ever happen to another Harvard student athlete competing for Harvard, there'll be a fund there where those families know that they have support. And when you think of what families have to do in this, and you think of the astronomical medical costs, even with insurance, even with NCAA, catastrophic medical insurance, it's an incredible challenge. And if you look at his mom and dad, Marty and Sherry, they fly up here on a second's notice in the worst possible reason, and they haven't been home in a month. Particularly, they've been just here. They're not working, and to be able to support these folks in their time of need has been exactly what we needed to do, and so happy about the way the Harvard community has responded, as has the Hoover, Alabama community.
I look to rally around Ben, and we'll continue to keep people informed on our broadcast on Bloomberg Business Radio and here on Inside Harvard Football over the course of the year. Coach, thanks very much as always for your time, and we'll see you down the road in Ithaca this weekend. Best of luck. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's edition of Inside Harvard Football. Bernie Corbett going back to the defense this week for our Crimson Profile. We have Harvard senior safety man Tanner Lee from Spanish Fort, Alabama. And Tanner, want to welcome you to the show. Glad you could spend some time and join us this week.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, Tanner, off to a impressive start for you personally. 15 tackles through 3 games, including 7 unassisted, and one of the defensive leaders for the second year in a row. And also factored in with a big pick 6 against Brown. And not to be outdone, Rashawn McGee did it again last week. The overall performance of the Crimson defense has been providing some very timely big plays in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been in the right spot at the right time, and it's good that we've taken advantage of some of those opportunities. Hopefully we can keep that going as we get down the stretch. Especially with a lot of big games coming up, including the first one this weekend.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Indeed, back in Ivy play this week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And you certainly had something to build on from last year, Tanner. 41 tackles a year ago. You were 6th in the team overall, but certainly had a great nose for the football. 4 INTs put you among the leaders, not just to lead the Crimson, but among the leaders in the Ivy League. Has that always been part of your game back to high school? Have you always been a guy that's been around the football and had a chance to create some turnovers?
Yeah. So in high school, I had 2 interceptions my junior year and 2 interceptions my senior year. They came at a pretty good time. In high school, the coaches like to put me in positions to make a lot of plays. I feel like I had a lot more tackles in high school than I have in college, but I'm hoping to get my nose or keep my nose around the football. Especially for the next 7 games.
Looking at the Crimson defense, and I know a lot of pride on the defensive side of the ball. Pitched the shutout, just the 2 points were a safety involving the special teams, but very impressive pitching the shutout against Georgetown. What about the defense? Coach Murphy always talks about a championship caliber defense. How do you see this defense coming together and gelling as it has now as you head toward the meat of the Ivy League schedule?
Defense is all about a few things. If you stop the run and you keep the ball in front of you on the back end, you're going to have a good chance at winning the game. With our defensive line, we're always going to have a lot of dudes up front, and every game is one in the trenches. And I feel like we have some of the best personnel and the best schemes in the league to remain at the top, especially at defensive line. With the linebacker core, we have Luke Hutton. He's been around for a few years now. He's the mind of the defense. He's always around the ball. He's always calling out plays. He's kind of the brain while we're out there. And then on the back end you have a couple good guys, good experience. With Rashawn and Timmy Hale and Toby and myself, just keeping everything in front of us. So as long as we continue to stop the run and not get balls thrown over our head, I think we'll end up being pretty good.
And with the injury to Wes Ogsbury, you've also managed to work in some of the younger players now, really by necessity. They're getting the baptism of fire right now and seem to have responded very well in the overall scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. With Wes going out, we had Toby come in. Toby's a senior. He's been playing, for the past couple of years, but now, he's got that starting role. And I think he's doing a great job for us. He's one of the most athletic people on the field, and yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's very, very smart, very football smart, and it's just great seeing him out on the field more. He's one of my really good friends too, so that's cool as well.
Mm-hmm. And also would be remiss if we didn't mention your academic prowess. You're a math major and COSIDA Academic All-American. And we always talk about there's the season and there's the reason when it comes to playing college sports and college athletics. And it looks like you really are a renaissance man, Tanner, that excels all facets with the classroom being very important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Academics are very important. I've always, tried my hardest in the classroom. And, especially coming here, I wanted to continue that. I wanted to make sure, or especially just knowing that football is going to end someday. Having that education, nobody can take that away from you. You'll have that for the rest of your life. So just trying to take advantage of my opportunities here at Harvard. And, with the acknowledgments that I've had, I'm very blessed and very thankful. And I just hope to, continue that through my senior year.
And hailing from Alabama, a rather football-centric state, to say the least. You were part of a Division State champion team back during your high school career. Also was named All-County and All-Region. And what about that Friday Night Lights experience of playing football in Alabama? Pretty special, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, playing Friday Night Lights. For the Daphne Trojans, it was awesome. My freshman year team was arguably the best team in state history. I didn't play. We had a couple really, more than a couple really good guys. Off of that team, we now have 5 guys in the NFL,
Wow.
and that was a high school. And we were 15-0. We beat Hoover in the state championship. It was pretty awesome.
And your hometown, Spanish Fort, Alabama, I guess, is it self-explanatory to me, or should it be to me? I've just noted when I've talked about you during the games and make the introductions with the hometowns. What is the origin of that? I guess Spain had a fort in that town at one time.
Yeah. So it was a big battlefield during the Civil War. My house actually sits on a big battlefield.
Wow.
My neighborhood is Spanish Fort Estates, and all the streets are named after, I guess, certain parts of the battlefield. So you have Artillery Range, that's a street. You have the Watchtower, that's the street I live on. So they're all named after, I guess, the role that part of the battlefield played. I guess in that neighborhood, Spanish Fort, there was a fort by the Spaniards, and there was a Union camp, there was a Confederate camp, and they pretty much they came together right there, which was a big turning point in the Civil War. So there's a lot more history to it that I can't really tell you a bunch about, but that's pretty much what I know.
Well, that's very enlightening. I've often wondered about that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And when you talk about the military, and I guess it's fitting for you to be from a town such as that, because truth be told, your dad was a former football player at West Point back in the 90s, your father Tyson.
Yeah, he played running back. He said he's pretty good back in the day, so I've always wanted to go one-on-one with him, but he said he's got a little old now. He's always telling me he can beat me in a race, but that's yet to happen. So yeah, I mean, it's been great growing up in a football home. My dad's always been my coach throughout Little League. He's taught me a lot about the game. He's taught me a lot about life, the game, and yeah, I mean, it's just been great so far.
And well-rounded athletically. You also back to high school, enjoyed baseball, captain of the baseball team, and not surprisingly, being a Harvard athlete, you were a class valedictorian.
Yeah, those were the glory days. Being able to play 2 sports, especially at a really big high school in Alabama, it was awesome. It was awesome for building all sorts of skills, personal skills, athletic skills that are transferable between sports. Playing shortstop and kind of leading the team to a playoff berth and second round. It was great all the way around. We faced a lot of adversity, especially in baseball, and just growing. And I actually started playing varsity baseball before I started playing football, varsity football. So that was a big way for me to build my confidence and kind of get that I can play with the big boys. So anyways.
And last week, very prestigious William V. Campbell Award. It is the absolute highest honor in college football for the scholar athlete. And you were named one of the national semifinalists for that award. Just to give us a little bit of perspective, that must have been some great news for you, I'm sure, to be put in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great, hearing, especially hearing your name or seeing your name on a list with the top, student athletes in the country. It's very rewarding for me, just kind of seeing, my hard work both in the classroom and on the football field, kind of all incorporated into one nomination or one award. And it's just kind of great, like I said, seeing all of that stuff coming together in my last year here. So, I hope to keep playing good ball and keep doing well in the classroom, and we'll see where that semifinalist, or the finalist position, ends up.
Crimson once again back in the Ivy race this weekend, traveling up, making the long trek to Ithaca to take on Cornell. The Cornell game last season was a memorable one for you. You were named the Ivy Defensive Player of the Week for your efforts. You had 2 picks and 3 tackles in that game, and here come the Big Red again, Tanner.
Yeah, it's great that I had a good game versus them last year. That just means I have to play well this year as well. Can't take any games off, and I just know that they're gonna come at me. So I just gotta be ready got to play within the scheme and make plays that come my way.
You mentioned earlier that your high school at Daphne against versus Hoover High School, another one of the football powerhouses in the state of Alabama, and of course that was the high school that your teammate Ben Abercrombie hailed from, and the announcement today of Stand Up for Ben, and I know that you're very close, and I'm sure we're part of the recruiting process to bring Ben to Harvard, and the announcement today will really serve as a rallying point for everybody, and I know that there's been literally hundreds of people that have responded to look to help Ben. Now there'll be a concerted initiative to stand up and stand behind Ben, and I know you had the experience of going down and being able to give him the game ball recently.
Yeah, Ben is an awesome kid. Got an awesome family, and especially seeing him after the Brown game and taking him the game ball, that was awesome for both him and for the guys that went down to see him. He's got a bigger heart than anybody I've ever met, and it's just a time where we all have to come together and support him and stand up for him. Because we know he's fighting a long and hard battle right now. So we're going to be behind him, and I'm really excited to see all of the people that have come together. And with this fight, Ben has the best of the best behind him. So with that being said, I'm very thankful that we have this community and the people that are coming together behind him, and I look forward to seeing his progress in the future.
Oh, indeed, as will we all. Once again, thoughts and prayers to Ben and his family. And standing up, the Crimson will make their next stand at Shelkoff Field in Ithaca, taking on the Big Red at Cornell and Ivy play this weekend. And Tanner, we want to wish you the best of luck to you and your teammates moving forward this weekend and down the road in pursuit of that Ivy title. And thank you very much for coming on to join us here as our Crimson Profile on Inside Harvard Football. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Tanner Lee, Harvard's senior safety man from Spanish Fort, Alabama. Our guest here, our Crimson Profile on Inside Harvard Football. We'll be back. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's edition of Inside Harvard Football. Bernie Corbett pleased to be joined this week by one of the board members of the Friends of Harvard Football, the vice president, class of 1981, former Harvard Gridiron elite. Boy, you get better as you get older, don't you, Dan?
I love it.
Dan Mee from the class of 81. He is the vice president of the Friends of Harvard Football. Dan, want to welcome you, and I've talked to some of the other members of the Friends of Football, and of course Bob Glatz of the Varsity Club, and sincerely thank you for making it possible this year. We are, with our broadcasts on Bloomberg Business Radio, in fact, presented by, as we remind everybody, the Friends of Harvard Football, and we are truly partners, and hopefully long will that run as far as partnership to keep us on and keep Harvard Nation, Harvard Football Nation informed. So welcome. Great to have you with us.
Bernie, happy to be here, and thank you so much for all you do for Harvard Football. We're delighted to be one of your sponsors. The Friends of Harvard Football has been around for half a century or more. We have a twofold mission. First is to support the current team with both financially and with mentorship. But the second and equally important part of our mission is to encourage camaraderie among Harvard football alumni. And we have over about 1,000 members of the Friends of Harvard Football throughout the country. And as part of that, fostering the camaraderie, we hold events throughout the year. And if you have a moment, I'd love to give you a sense of how deep our reach is and really how extensive some of these events are. We hold anywhere from 12 to 16 events a year. They start out in the spring. We have a reception for graduating seniors that are joined by alumni at a restaurant downtown, and it's really terrific. The young alumni really run this for us, and it's a wonderful way to welcome the graduating seniors into the fold and let them know that the Friends of Harvard Football are their team for life. After that,
Yes.
He's usually the MC, comes down from ESPN, and he's a real character. Anyone who's watched his broadcast on ESPN knows he's a real talent. I mean, not in your class, Bernie, but he's young. He's working on it.
He could beat me in the 40, I'll tell you that.
Both of us, my friend. Then we have what we call the Stadium Club dinner, and this is for people who make a real impact on Harvard football throughout the year. And it's a smaller group. We have about 30 people that we fed at the Harvard Club of Boston. And after that, Bernie, we move around the country. And Coach Murphy is spectacular. He really makes himself available for these receptions that we have. And New York's held every year, and the Boston receptions are held every year. But we alternate the remote cities. So in no particular order, we go to Washington, D.C., we go to Atlanta, Georgia. This coming spring, we're going to go to Orlando, Florida for the first time. We go to Dallas, Texas. We go to Chicago. And we get out on the West Coast, and we do San Francisco and Los Angeles. And in each of those locations, we have teams of alumni, former football players on the ground that put these together. And those receptions have about 50 people attending, and it's fantastic. People hear Coach talk about the past season, the upcoming season. They watch a highlight film. And then, as Coach Murphy is wont to do, there's typically a Q&A on anything football. He's really a spectacular speaker. We're so fortunate to have him. Getting into the season, where we are now, we just came back from Washington, and we had two events down in D.C. on the Friday night before the game. The Friends of Harvard Football teamed up with the Harvard Club of Washington, D.C., the Varsity Club, the Department of Athletics, and we hosted a reception, and we had probably 250 people at this reception, and Coach Murphy came and spoke, and it was really spectacular. And then on game day, we hosted a tailgate before and after the game, and we had some great guys on the ground that led that for us. Eric Spiegel, class of 80, Alec Spizak, class of 12, Paul Dean, class of 93, and Carl Ehrlich. We've just been blessed. Guys know what the program meant to them, and they're just really anxious and ready to answer the call and help out. Coming up, we'll have a film huddle with Coach Murphy. This is coming up on October 26th, middle of the week. Coach will take some time out, and we'll start this at about 11:30 in the morning. It'll go to about 1 o'clock, have a light lunch, and Coach will show some highlight films of what's happened in the season, maybe the upcoming game, give us some insights to his game plan, and obviously we don't let any of the opponents into this room, but Coach
yep, restricted
to tantalize us with some of his strategies. And I got to tell you, this is just a real treat for especially some of our older members from the 60s who hit him with pretty hard questions, and Coach loves it. And more than once I've seen some old-timer come up and give an embrace and says, "I'd line up in your huddle any day, Murphy." It's really nice.
That's great.
Really nice.
Yep.
Moving on into the fall, we'll have one of our bigger events is what we call our Champions Reunions. And each year, it's either on, typically on Yale. Obviously, Yale's in New Haven this year, so we're going to hold it at Penn. But all the teams that end in, either a 5 or a 10 anniversary, we will host them. The Friends of Harvard Football will host them on campus 07, we have Brendan Bevero and Jeff Compass leading the charge, and in 07, Brad Vegas and Chris Bizzotti. So it's a lot of those names probably are familiar to some of your listeners, and they were all just real contributors to the program when they played, and they continue to do it. It's really a blessing to have them part of it. Coming up to Yale Week, Bernie, you're certainly aware of this. Maybe some of the listeners aren't, but
Yeah.
Harvard does something really. Harvard and Yale do something really unusual, I think. College sports for fierce rivalry. We're able to set aside some of the vitriolic nonsense you see in sports today, and Harvard and Yale letter winners will sit down to a luncheon every fall, and when it's at Yale hosts it. It's called the Levering Luncheon, and when it's in Cambridge, we call it Clark Luncheon, and it's a real special event. And part of the highlight of that event is a former player from each school will get up and we'll talk about what playing in the Harvard-Yale game meant to them. And I got to tell you, Bernie, over the years, I mean, there have been some just spectacular accounts of not only what the game meant to them in that time and place, but what it's meant to them over the years, and what that relationship with their teammates and kind of the formative part of their life, how it's helped mold them into the men they are today. This year, our speaker is going to be Larry Bully from that grade 82 team, and so I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be outstanding. Friends put two buses together that come down from the stadium, so people don't have to drive to that ugly saucer in the ground they call the Yale boat. Those outside words, Bernie, I was just mentioning that. Never liked that Yale bowl. But it was good to me in 1979. But we have these buses. They leave Cambridge and about 6:30 in the morning, and we get down there about 9, and they return after the game. And I tell you, they're filled with parents and alumni, and it's a nice way to not have to drive and just enjoy it. Certainly, the highlight of every season is the awards dinner that friends organize, and that's held at the Harvard Club of Boston. So that gives you a sense of maybe some of the things that we do, and it's a year-round organization, and rally when there are special needs, be it coach needs something. A few years ago, we redid the locker room, but this year with the horrible accident, injuries to Ben Abercrombie, the friends have rallied with the rest of the Harvard family to help that cause, and our prayers and thoughts are obviously with Ben and his family. We've got some recent news that looks like there are some encouraging signs, but the lad has a long way to go, and every one of us is pulling for him. But Bernie, I can't thank you again enough for all you do, and being the voice of Harvard football across the nation. People I know can pick this up online, and so many parents have gotten back to Coach and to the friends and said, "Wow, it's just wonderful to be able to pull that broadcast up around the country and hear what our boys are doing when we can't get up to the game." So this is a real important part of our program, and you've done an outstanding job. I can't thank you enough.
Dan, thanks very much, and it really has, and as I've said to Coach Murphy a number of times during now my almost 20-year tenure, believe it or not, back to 1998, that it's been an honor to serve as the voice of Harvard football, and hopefully it will continue for many seasons to come, and many seasons of success. The bar has been raised very high, Dan, you mentioned about Coach Murphy, and I just look at that 16 consecutive years of 7 or more wins. You win 7 out of 10, at least 16 years in a row. It's a remarkable run of success, and I know that you and your organization, as you've articulated with all the events and initiatives that are part of the Friends of Football, you truly are, as we talk about each week on the broadcast, the team behind the team to ensure its success year in and year out.
Thank you, Bernie. Keep up the good
Thanks very much to Dan Mee, Vice President of the Friends of Harvard Football, joining us here this week on Inside Harvard Football.